Alrighty, and we are live. So hello there, everyone, and welcome to today's video around what is PIM and Headless E-Commerce. I'm Brendan, and today we're joined by Bård, who is the CEO and founder of Crystallize, and he's here to talk to us about what exactly PIM is and what Headless E-Commerce is. So feel free, if you've got any questions, to leave them in the YouTube comments in the chat here, and we'll address them as we go along, hopefully in real time. So I'll pass you over to Bård now, who will start talking about the PIM and e-commerce.
Thank you, Brendan. So, also thank you, Brendan, for being able to step in for Stavros on very short notice today. So thanks for that. Okay, so we get this question very often. PIM, what is that? And perhaps even more often, so headless e-commerce, what is it really, and why? Why would you use headless e-commerce? So I'll try to explain here today a little bit the concepts and our twist on PIM and headless e-commerce. But basically, if you are talking about, like definition of PIM is basically everything you need in order to market and sell your products online. Product information management is the abbreviation. And to us, that means that you should be able to not only define, a product SKU, stock keeping unit, having the stock, how many t-shirts do you have, and of course the pricing, which is like core product properties together with the name, and maybe you have variants like sizes of t-shirts, colors, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of traditionally the very core of product information management. But of course, if you're going to have this in an app or on a website, or use it to create basically an enjoyable customer experience, you need some rich media, images, videos, storytelling, and also rich marketing content that is not specifically a product, and we'll look a little bit to that as well. But basically, PIM is a central repository of all the information you need to market and sell your products. That's for short. An example of, I think this is a good example of how you would go for a tailor-made approach when you are managing product information. Let's say you're selling appliances, kitchen appliances. Then you would have a product, which is the actual appliance, like a stand mixer, for example. And you would, of course, have the core product properties, as I talked about, like price, stock, SKU. But you typically would need to have some text specs, some photos. You maybe have a story to tell because you're selling on an emotional level, perhaps. But often, if you're going to sell a product online, you need to market it. And in order to market it, you typically have to have a content strategy. You need to be able to build out the tailor-made information architecture. So this example here is like a product information to, let's say, sell appliances. And the content strategy there could be to create engaging recipes with video content that shows a professional chef how you make great dishes, and even maybe you have ingredients so that you semantically describe this product and rich marketing content. And of course, this like an ingredient you could have, is this an organic ingredient? What's the nutritional information? And this is all semantic information, so meaning that you have the meaning behind, not just traditionally like a PDF, which is just a container of formatted content. You don't know anything about what information you're actually seeing. So our approach is very semantically structured so that you can retrieve the information that is relevant for what you're going to display in your app or on your website. And of course, this could be used for searching for recipes that are purely organic and that sort of thing. Okay, so that's the core of PIM. The other approach, or the other topic actually, that you mentioned, Brandon, is headless e-commerce. Headless is, of course, it's a brutal brutal word, but traditionally software have been written like you have a SQL database, you have maybe some PHP code, maybe you have some templates that are in a folder on the server that is running this monolithical architecture where you actually install your software and your customizations to that software and put it on the internet on a live server. So that's the traditional monolithical approach, which you have a lot of vendors that take this approach, like Magento or WooCommerce or that type of software is monolithical. It's traditional server-based. Headless approach is basically to decouple the front ends, the presentation, like a web shop or an app or a kiosk, in-store experience. All of this can be plugged on top of a headless e-commerce service. And of course, when we talk about PIM in this perspective, it will serve all of the product information and rich marketing content that allows you to populate your web shop and create enjoyable shopping experiences, so you get return customers. There's another aspect of this also is when you have PIM as a service versus install, because you can have software that manages what I talked about, product information, and you can install it on the server. When you have it as a service, it means that it's like Amazon services. It's an API that you access. In our case, we have chosen GraphQL, which is a technical term for a type of APIs that actually Facebook created back in not so long ago, a few years back. So it's a new approach to APIs. It basically means that you can have a very fast call to retrieve exactly the information you're looking for, instead of the API just sending you a standard set of information. If you're just looking for the price and the name, you can fetch that, and that's what is being returned. Now, why is that important? Earlier this year, actually in May, Google released what they call the Core Web Vitals. And this is metrics that are used to measure the performance of your website, web shop. They made it much harder to score well there. You can measure this in PageSpeed Insight. Actually, we have another video where we show how this works, how we can test your Core Web Vitals. But basically, you want to build as fast as possible web shop. And for that, you need a fast API. With GraphQL, we're able to limit the payload, the data that we're sending. So you can send just the information that you need. And when you have this as an API service, and as we have a globally distributed API service, we're able to deliver low latency product information across the globe. So that means you can build a fast web shop on top of this, or an app. But for Google, they're typically measuring the speed of web shops, which means if you're fast, you get better ranking in Google, and you pay less for ads. If you're using Google ads to promote your products, they actually give you a penalty up to 400%. It's not only performance they check, but basically, if you have a very slow website, you will pay more for ads also. So you want to be fast, and that's kind of what we're talking about in this GraphQL era. But for headless e-commerce, we basically have two sides of the story. We have the first one, which is this being able to plug in different heads on your backend. So in this example here, you see like a kiosk, like a in-store, I don't know, it could be ordering of burgers, for example. You have probably seen those types of kiosks before. It could be a web shop, or it could be an app, for example. But to do e-commerce, you also need to send the orders somewhere. So that's the other side of it, being able to orchestrate incoming orders and to tackle that with high performance. And this is a different type of performance aspect that we're talking about here. And I can basically show a little bit on this topic, which I think is really interesting. We did a test because remember Black Friday last year? There was several stories in the newspapers, especially here in the Nordics. They added online queues because their e-commerce would not accept as many orders as the customers wanted. They wanted to buy that TV or whatever. So it was like online queues for up to 1 hour. That's not a great customer experience. So what we did was a benchmark, which is, if you are in e-commerce, you really should benchmark and load test your service so you know what's the capacity. And we did this test with 1 million orders throughput during an hour. So basically 285 requests per second. And this is 285 orders placed per second, which adds up to just about 1 million orders per hour. So that's kind of the rate you want to be at. You want to make sure that you can really build an enjoyable customer experience. If we are looking at maybe I should show some stuff, Brendan. So I'll show two things. I'll show first how the front end could look for a headless e-commerce. So we have our main demo site up and running. You can check it out. It's public, furniture.superfastshop. And this is basically one example of a shopping experience built on top of Crystallize. It's using our open source boilerplate for, in this case, it's a Jamstack Next.js, if we talk about technology. It's basically super fast storefront on top of Crystallize with both product information and rich marketing content, like, for example, HD video, so that you could have like this fancy interior magazine that is, selling chairs, for example. But that's one channel, and of course, web is for most maybe the main channel. But what if you are interested in something totally different? I'll show an example here, which is very different from web. Let's say you want to create a catalog, a printed catalog. Here I use Figma, which is a design tool we use at Crystallize all the time. But basically what I've done is created a simple template for like a front page of a furniture magazine and a backside. And this is my own personal design. So yeah, it's what it is. But basically what I'm doing is connecting it to the API in Crystallize. So this is the fetching products, directly from our product repository. And what I'm able to do here, as an example, is basically use the data from Crystallize to here generate content in Figma. So here I basically have a catalog, which I can now, if I want to, I can export this to PDF and have something you can print. And if you want to have a very traditional product catalog, in some cases that might be relevant. The point of showing this is that this is a very different channel than web.
So just to jump in here for a second, this is what you mean by multi-channel, right? Where you've got different outlets that use the same data, but in very different ways.
Exactly. So we have the repository of our product information, and it's reused across channels. And of course, the web is the first one you probably think about, and that's why I wanted to show like a totally different channel. It could be like a we have customers that use this for in-store displays, like screens in like a coffee roastery showing advertisements and films where the content comes from Crystallize, but are being displayed on the stores in coffee shop in this case, or roastery. Of course, everybody wants an app. So we have made an open source boilerplate for building a native app. And this is using the same product information that we now used for print. And you can create, great experiences also in this case for, native apps for, in this case, iOS and Android. And technology here is using React Native. So those are kind of three heads on the same backend as an example. So all of the images are managed centrally, the pricing and description, and you choose for each language, not language, but channel, what data do you need there. Use the GraphQL, or the developers use the GraphQL to just pick exactly the information you're looking for. And of course, there is a other side of this, which is how is this managed? Because now we looked at, the web shop. We looked at how you could do print if you want to do that. It's more of an example, and how you can do an app. And what we have in Crystallize. So Crystallize is a multi-tenant service. So you basically can switch between different organizations. If you're an agency, for example, you might have multiple clients that have web shops running on Crystallize, and then you can manage the product catalog. And for us, that is all content you need to market and sell your products. We have some concepts here that I also want to talk about, like topics and grids, which is to build taxonomies and foundations for building a richer customer experience. If I look at, for example, my Big Bowl launcher, so this here is back office PIM. Of course, if you have a lot of products, you typically would use the API and integrate into already existing ERP or a system that has the information about your products. But if you're using Crystallize to build out your catalog and manage the content here, this is where you will change your prices, stock, VAT, SKUs, stock keeping units. And if you have multiple variants, you can add that, color variations, for example. But of course, also the rich marketing content, so that you could add here, images, videos, and of course the specs, in this case, of your furniture. And then you can also use the topics to build out taxonomies. So you can use this to add semantic relations between products, but also products and other rich content. I can switch. I talked about coffee, so I can switch to another. So this is not the furniture tenant. This is a coffee tenant, so a different repository. And in this case, I'll just look at the Colombian coffee. And here you have a product that is available in different roasts, light, medium, dark, super dark. But the marketing content here is richer. So there's more attributes added here, like you have the pictures of the coffee, you have the history, maybe you have more complex relations, like to farm, where was this grown, what type of bean is it, which coffee shops actually serve this coffee, which is relevant if you're building like an ecosystem. And then you have the topics here that add richness to your semantics. So here you have, brewing method, you have the type of bean, maybe flavor profile like chocolate, spicy, blood orange, and so on. So this is what you can use with the topic maps, is to build out beautiful information architecture, basically. And you can assign this to any product or other types of content. And I can look at an example here, because if you want to sell coffee online, you have to create engaging customer experiences. And that typically means that you would like to have described your farm, for example. Where is this made? So that you can add a rich piece of content that the customers can get all the information. This is made at 2,000 meters above sea level in Colombia. It's organic. And again, to jump back to the headless part, so this is now stored in the repository, and what we can do is fetch this directly via the API. So it's both the storage, but it's also the distribution. So all of the images are stored on CDN, so it means that it's fast available immediately. The API is distributed globally, and you can take a look here at to fetch this data. It takes 6 milliseconds. I have transfer time a little bit bigger now because I'm on a mobile network, remote here. But the server here is really fast. That's kind of the in order to feed live data to an app, you need your APIs to respond ridiculously fast, and that's kind of the focus that we have in this case on the management of products and rich marketing content. We also have a concept here called grids. I can maybe switch back to my furniture tenant, because in this case, the products that are featured on the main landing page, they are displayed here in a grid. And this is kind of products and stories you want to highlight, and you want this to be easily populated. So you can define and populate the grid quickly in Crystallize with drag and drop, basically. And you can have a dedicated grid, for example, to your mobile app, for example. And this is, in this case, what's being used to generate the grid here on my mobile app. That's managed in the Crystallize PIM backend. But once you've created this experience, you want to start taking in orders. And the order intake is what I showed. You want to have high throughput capabilities in your API so that you can really scale for these high volume orders. But once you've received it, what we do is we orchestrate the orders. So this is part of the headless e-commerce, which is different than PIM, because you're managing your orders and you're managing the fulfillment. So here you have, in this example, it's for the furniture tenant, we have in-store pickup, for example, where you can look at the different states that you have defined. You define the states from new, packing, ready, to delivered. And you could either do this, manually by drag and drop, or you could integrate with, a third-party delivery service or what have you. So it could be used for physical products, and you can have different pipelines. And this is the, core of having e-commerce, is to be able to complete kind of the circle with fulfilling your orders. And if it's home delivery or in-store pickup, or perhaps a digital subscription, access to a newspaper or similar to that, you want to use the webhooks and which is the events that we fire off in Crystallize. You want to be able to use this to complete the round trip of creating your product, marketing it on all the web shops, apps, and then capturing the order and integrating with either your in-house fulfillment or third-party service for shipping out those products. And that's, I think, the round trip, Brendan, in terms of headless e-commerce and PIM, at least with our view in mind.
Yeah, so the webhooks, they're not just limited to the orders and pipelines, they can be used also for the catalog items, right?
That's true. So we are, which I didn't cover here, which is our approach to e-commerce. And since we are, distributed and we focus on scalability, we're event driven. So every change in the system is generating an event, and you can subscribe to these events, typically by listening to a webhook, so that you could, for example, whenever a product is changed, you can do something. If somebody adds another recipe, you can send out a newsletter, if that would make sense. So it's to orchestrate any change in either your catalog or order intake or order states. Yeah.
Great. Now that sounds really good. Yeah, and I think you've done a nice job there of summing up exactly what the PIM is, showing how the interface works, and how Crystallize provides a really great headless e-commerce experience.
Thank you, Brandon.
And yeah, I think with that, we're pretty much at an end. So if you've enjoyed this video, thanks for watching the live stream, first of all. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a like. If you're watching it after the live stream's aired, feel free to leave a comment. We'll be sure to reply. And make sure you subscribe to our channel as well for future live streams and future videos. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.